Hi, this is Salaudin with lecture number 9. In the previous lecture, we talked about George I, his personality, and his accession to the throne of England. And today we will talk about the major events of the reign of George I. Judge One reign starts from 1714 and lasts 1727. So in this meantime, what happened? We will talk about all those events that took place in this meantime of 13 years, starts from 1714 to 1727. The first and major event that took place was, of course, the Jacobite Rising of 1715. And who were Jacobites? We already talked about in detail, but Jacobites were those of James II, and his descendant and their supporters were known as Jacobites. In 1714, during the reign of Queen Anne, Bolingbroke, the leader of the Tory party, had tried his best to bring back the James II's son, Edward James, to the throne of England. But the death of Queen Anne in 1714 nullified and all his efforts. And George Louis, who become George I and come to the throne of England, as we talked in the previous lecture, how he came to the throne of England. Thus, the Jacobite revolted in 1714 in support of James Edward, who was the son of James II, and who is popularly known as Old Pretender. And this rising of 1714 is known as the Uprising of 1714. So this Jacobite revolt that took place in 1715 with the help of the Tory party, and the leader of the Tory party at that time was Bolingbroke. So this was the first event that took place in the reign of George I. So what were the causes of this rising of 1715? We will try to make it short and to the point, because we cannot make the video long, and it will be definitely difficult for you people to watch it complete, of having that much length. So I'm trying to make it short. This is history, and it's history. There could be many things, and from every point and from every aspect you need to support your argument and your point, but I am trying to make it short. So for this reason, you are supposed to jot down those points, and if you need notes of these lectures, definitely you can comment in the comment section, and I will try to provide it, that how you can get these notes, which is available in some markets, in some places like in Lahore, in Patiala House, and as well as in Kapi Shop, Peshawar. So I will try to make it accessible to you people. It depends on you. So what were the causes of this rising? The first event that is of great importance, and of course that took place in the reign of George I. There were great number of villagers, the nobility, the Catholic farmers of Ireland, and the hilly tribes of Scotland, who were trying to bring back the Jacobites, and of course the Stuart dynasty. And we also talked about the policy of the Tory party, that they were believing in the divine right of kingship. So thus the first reason was those people from Haley people from the Scotland, and the the Tory party, they were in support to bring back the Stout dynasty on the throne of England. This was, of course, the first reason. Secondly, the Tory party wanted to get the gain, to get the favor of the Louis the 14th, the King of France, who was a staunch believer and staunch supporter of the Stout king, right? It means James II and his pretenders. And third important reason was the Jacobites were mistaken that the people would support their cause against the new Hanoverian dynasty. People did not support them when the revolt started, so thus they were mistaken. This is, of course, the third reason. And fourthly, the unattractive personality of George I that we have talked in the previous lecture, that his unattractive personality was, of course, a matter of shame and he could not win the favor of the people. Thus, the people and ultimately they instigated the Jacobites to revolt against the Hanoverian dynasty. And we also talked about the Hanoverian dynasty. Who were Hanoverian? Hanoverian were, of course, those came from the Hanover in Germany to the throne of England. These were the causes of the uprising. And now, what events did take place? Porster, a rich man, and the Earl of Derwenter were the leader of this revolt in England. They created great uprising in Northern Ireland and Scotland, and even in Lancashire. But the Royal Army gave them a crushing defeat at Preston and Lancashire in November 1715, and thus the rebellion in England was brought under control. Now, what were the causes of this uprising of 1715? So we will talk about the causes of the uprising, and the question might be in this way: what were the causes of the revolt against Hanoverian dynasty? Right, this is one aspect of the question. And second, the question can also be asked in this way: what were the major events that took place in the reign of George I? Or the question might be asked in this way as well: that what were the major events between 1714 to 1727, which of course the era of George I. So the question can be set from any dimension. If you grasp and if you study the entire question, then you will be able to answer the question. If from whatever and from any dimension it is being asked, you will be able to answer the question. So what were the causes of the failure of this uprising? The uprising took place. The causes of the uprising we talked about. Now coming to the cause of the failure of the rising of 1715. So the first cause was the Jacobite could not receive much help from France because Louis XIV was the most active supporter of this rising died. Louis XIV was died, so he could not, the Jacobite could not receive that support which they had expectation from the France. This was the first reason. Secondly, the dangerous zone from where England had feared that the invasion can take place from this side, that dangerous zones were completely fortified and heavy and guarded heavily, and the navy was well equipped and check and control to check and control any invasion from that specific zone. Thirdly, James Edward, who was the son of James II, was himself a lazy man and he could not inspire his people to action. Thus, he fled to France, leaving people or his supporter in the lurch. And fifth important cause of the failure of this uprising was in this meantime in 1716, yes, the Whig party the Whig Party passed another act which is known as Septenal Act, and according to this act, now the lifespan of the Parliament could be 7 years instead of 3 years. The Triennial Act that we have talked about, that the Parliament lifespan shall be 3 years. Now it was decided that the lifespan of the Parliament shall be 17 years. And this was passed by the Whig because the situation and the crisis were there, the political crisis and wars. So they taking opportunity from this crisis and passed this act to lengthen the life of the Parliament to 7 years under the Act of Septennial Act. What were the reasons? What were the results? Sorry, what were the results of this rising, 1715? So the first reason, the Tory party had to earn a bad name after the failure of the rising 1715 and became weak after this event. Of course, the Tory party, they were the great supporters of Jacobites. They were lending support in this. After suppressing this revolt, they earned a bad name in the people as well as the party itself. Secondly, the Whig Party supported George I wholeheartedly and so became favorite party of the king. And the result was its supremacy in the parliament. And the Whig, they were supporting George I, and they were also different in political aspects from the to the Tory party. So thus this support resulted in the supremacy of the parliament. And most importantly, the third important result of this revolt was in order to suppress further activities of the Jacobites, the Riot Act was passed. And in this Riot Act, the judiciary was given extra power to suppress any kind of uprising again. And fourth important result of this revolt was the leader of this revolt, like Derwentwater, Poster, so they were hanged and even many were imprisoned. So these were the results of the rising of 1715. And this was the first event, right? We talked about the events, the causes and the results of the uprising. The second important event was the Septennial Act of 1716. The Jacobite revolt of 1715 caused a great unrest in the country. The parliament passed another act, and this act is known as the Septenal Act. According to Septenal Act, as we talked previously, the lifespan of the parliament was increased from 3 years to 7 years, and this was passed with the help of Whig Party. Even this remained intact for 200 years until 1911 the act was nullified and the lifespan of parliament was declared to be 5 years in 1911. So this was the second important event that took place in the reign of George I. And then another important event that took place, that was the Peerage Bill Act of 1719. In this bill, the king would have some royal members in the House of Lords. So in the House of Lords, the king would have some royal members, and those royal members would bring some other members to the parliament, and thus the king would have kind of more power in the House of Lords. But in the Peerage Act, this was decided that the king cannot increase those members of the House of Lords, and it was given to the parliament to increase the members of the House of Lords. So this act was, of course, a great blow to the power of the king. But this act could not pass due to the support of the Tory party, because Tory party was in support of the divine rightship of the king, and even they were religiously intolerant, and as we discussed the policy of the Tory party. So this bill was not passed, but the event took place in the reign of George I. And another important event that took place was the South Sea Bubble 1711. So South Sea Company was known as South Sea Bubble, but the act is known as South Sea Company in 1711, and it was a trading company which established in 1711 by the Tory leader Harley in order to trade with the South America. And Harley had this thing in mind that he will write off or repair the debt that it caused to the caused to England as a result of the War of Spanish Succession and some political instability. But what happened? So all this company was assumed is the major trading company, and people start buying share in the company. But what happened? Some companies that were not in reality, but giving this false temptation to the people that they are working with the company and they have their company in the South Sea Company. So they were envisioning those company just for making the money. What happened at the end that those company got withered away. In the South Sea Company, the people who were in reality had share in the South Sea Company also start selling their shares due to the panic created. So this company is known as the so the South Sea Company lost hold like many other companies also. This company also got bankrupt, and this even came to be known as the bursting out of the South Sea Bubble. Because what happened, all of a sudden they starting making money, but at the end the reality was different, and they caused great damage to the company as well as to the people, and thus they again something bad happened, and as a result of this event in the reign of George I. What was the really now coming to the second important event of that reign of George I, that was the religious policy. In this time, the Whig Party was in power during the reign of George I. All the policies of the government were chalked out by the Whig, and the religious policy of the Whig party was much appeased the dissenters. The dissenters who were non-believer in the Anglican Church or the English Church. And they believe, as we talked in the previous lectures, that the Whig, they were quite tolerant, and they were quite religiously, they were tolerant in their religious faith. So and this was another fallacy that took place, that bringing religious toleration in the reign of George I. And most important was the ascendancy of the Whig party. How the Whig party ascended in the reign of George I. Tory party had they were against the Hanoverian dynasty. Thus, they had already invited the wrath of the king. On the other hand, the Whig party, they were in favor of the Hanoverian, and they supported George I in every aspect. Thus, they even all the three prime ministers of the George I reign were that from the Whig party. The first was the Townshend, right, from 1714 to 1716, and then comes the Stanhope, 1716 to 21, and then of course the known as the first prime minister is Walpole from the 1721 to 27, and then in the later life again he became the prime minister in the 40s, but until George I reign, he remained the prime minister from 1721 to 1727 when the Judge one was died. So all these three prime ministers were belonging to the Whig party. And how the Whig party was ascendant that we talked about, that George I was completely ignorant of the English language. He was ignorant of the political and cultural aspects of the English people, because he was from Hanover in Germany. Therefore, he could not understand the culture and the language of the English people. So things were given in the hands of the Whig party, and those Whig party prime minister become completely one and all, and they would carry out the activities and of those kings earlier. They were supposed to carry on those activities, but now those prime ministers from the Whig party were in power and carrying out all the activities of the states. Thus, this picture led to the ascendancy of the Whig party. And another important event that took place was the foreign policy of George I. George I had two aims in his foreign policy. The first one was the welfare and safety of his paternal state of Hanover in Germany, because he wanted to ensure the security of that state, Hanover, from where he came, which is located in Germany. And second was, he was keenly desired that the term of the Treaty of Utrecht must be keep intact. And the Treaty of Utrecht was Treaty of Utrecht took place after the War of Spanish Succession in 1713. And it was, we already talked about the terms of the Utrecht, that what were the terms, and what George I was trying in this treaty, that the Hanoverian must be ensured to come on the throne of England, rather the Catholics or some other faction of the religious faction could come on the throne of England. So these were the points, the events that took place in the George I reign. But how did he succeed in the in the establishment of this policy of those two aims that we talked about? One is the safety of the paternal state, and the second was the terms or the provisions of the Treaty of Utrecht must be keep intact. The favorable circumstances, there were some circumstances that led him to succeeded in his in those aims, those two aims. The first one was the death of Louis XIV of France. This was a favorable circumstance. Now his son came to the throne of the France, and he was not that much as Louis XIV was, cunning. And the second point was the fear of France from Spain, and at that time Spain was ruling by Philip V, and France was in despair that Spain might not interfere in the domestic or in the domestic affairs of the prince with the France with the help of England. And the third important favorable circumstances for the insurance of those two foreign policy of the George I was the Triple Alliance. In Triple Alliance, there was the or three country alliance known as the Triple Alliance. And who were those three countries? They were England, Spain, Spain, not Spain, England, France, and Holland. So they make an alliance through which they could carry out their activities, and they could form an alliance against any other state. So these were the favorable circumstances which led the Judge I to ensure his foreign policy. Now coming to the death of George I. These were events took place in the reign of George I, and now how his death took place when in 1727 he came back to Hanover in Germany. There he got paralyzed, and as a result of that paralysis, he died, and his son, the Prince of Wales, got nominated as the King of France, known as the George II. So in the next lecture, we will talk about George II, his policies, his events took place in that reign. So this is all about the George I's era, George I's reign, and the events that took place in the reign of George I. So thank you so much for watching the video. If there is any question, you must ask in the comment section. I am there to question your answers. So thank you so much for watching the video.